Hi, friends, and welcome to the premiere episode of Season 4 of Thriving Thoughts. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri. Hey, listen, before we dive into today's episode, which is a very special one to me because it highlights exactly what the theme of Season 4 is all about, which is thriving alone. Yes, my friends, in this season, you're going to hear from so many people who at some point in their lives, and in some cases, for the majority of their lives, like my guest today, Amy Shinneman, felt alone. And we're not going to dive into woe is me and woe are they for feeling so alone. And this is not a season about you are not alone. Maybe you are feeling alone. And when somebody tells you you are not alone, it feels like a little bit of an insult because it sure doesn't feel that way. My friends, this season is dedicated to you because when you do feel alone, it is a legitimate feeling, it is valid, and number two, you have the power and the opportunity to learn how to use those alone spaces to thrive. So I'm so pleased to have you here, both on YouTube, if you're watching on video for the first time, and on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. I'm so thankful that you're here. Thank you so much for your listenership, which continues to make this show possible, reaching across 6 continents now. I'm so grateful for each of you and just for the words that you share with me of encouragement. You can email the show at thrivingthoughtswithdrsherri, that's Sherri with an I, at gmail.com. Also, my friends, I'd love to invite you to join me in my Thriving Thoughts texting community. It's a community that allows me to engage directly with you on a very personal, real level. You see, a lot of things get revealed to me throughout the week. I live a thriving life, meaning I learn from every experience I have, and I want to share that learning with you. When you become a part of the Thriving Thoughts texting community, you become privy to those learning experiences that I have, and I share them with you. I share them with you 3 times a week. You get a shareable quote on an image that you can share on social media or even forward to a friend. It's a less than a cup of coffee investment for you at $2.99 per month, which you can discontinue at any time when you join the Thriving Thoughts texting community. Yeah, you get this encouragement. Yes, you get these shareable images. Yes, you get the opportunity to live out what it looks like to have a thriving thought world, kind of like I'm your personal coach, and you get to engage with me. So you can respond to me. Sometimes I actually ask you a question. So I'd love for you to be a part of that community. All you need to do is text the word thrive. That's THRIVE to 540-369-2139. That's a United States number. Again, it's 540-369-2139. Text the word thrive. And you'll be greeted with a message from me and instructions about how to sign up through Stripe. So thank you in advance for being a part of that community and for sharing that community with other friends. Without further ado, friends, let's go ahead and dive into episode 80, which is the first episode of season 4 of the Thriving Thoughts podcast. Okay. Hey, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Thriving Thoughts. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri. I'm super excited because this is season 4, and you are seeing this video as it's recorded live. Well, actually, you're not seeing it live. You're catching a replay of it, but there's probably going to be very minimal editing on my end since I'm not a videographer. But I am super excited to have this feature, and I'm so thankful to my guest, Amy Shinneman, today, who has agreed to come on the show with my really short learning curve here with this new platform. And so I'm just really grateful to you, Amy. Amy, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Where am I seeing you from today? Where do you live?
So I live in Noblesville, Indiana.
Noblesville. Now that sounds really familiar.
It's a little bit north of Indianapolis, about 30 minutes or so.
Okay. I know I visited out there once. It's probably been like 4 years, actually, with my ex, because he grew up out there. And so we went out for his like high school reunion, and we ended up going to some There was like a casino boat somewhere.
Yeah.
Evansville? Is that
Evansville? Yeah. Evansville. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I don't know if that's how far is that from you?
That's probably about 2.5, 3 hours.
Okay, so that's not okay. See,
not real close.
Here's the problem with telling people where you're from. Like you're like Indiana, and you're like, oh, I went to this little tiny podunk town, right? That must be near you.
Right.
Now, have you been born and raised in Indiana your whole life, Amy?
Yeah, I was born here and went to school here and went to college in Indiana, and then the only time I haven't lived in Indiana is when I lived in Memphis, Tennessee for 5 years after college. So
okay, well that's a substantial amount of time.
Yeah.
So you're back home, you're around your roots, and that's probably a good thing from what we are going to talk about today. And so for the listeners and the viewers in this case, because it's no longer just listeners, the season 4 of the podcast, the theme is thriving alone. And when Amy, you and I got connected through a mutual friend, and I'm so grateful for that. I tell everyone all the time that this podcast has been so successful just because of the organic connections that I've made through people. And it's just been a real blessing. But anyway, thriving alone. So it's not necessarily about thriving physically alone, right? Or thriving without relationship. It's thriving alone in an experience where you literally feel alone. And so I'm really honored to be able to talk with you about your experience today. And so I just want to dive in, if that's all right with you, and ask you, Amy, what is the situation or experience that you've had where you learned to thrive even though you were feeling alone?
Yeah. So, well, I think probably my first memory of when I feel like I started thriving alone was in nursery school.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So I live with muscular dystrophy.
Okay.
And however, there's going to be like 2 different parts to my story. And one is pre-diagnosis and one is post-diagnosis. I'm 46 years old, and I wasn't diagnosed till I was 44 years old.
So the pre-diagnosis part of the story is by far the longest part of the story.
The longest, yeah. And it's not, I just was undiagnosed. I was born with this disease, and they didn't figure it out till I was 44. But so back to your question, that's just the first vivid memory that I have of thriving alone. We were playing a game called Duck, Duck, Goose, which I'm sure you've heard of. And, we were all sitting in the circle, and people were taking their turn, and then somebody that was tapped me. And it was hard for me to get up, and then you have to chase the person.
Yeah, sure.
And a light bulb went off at that moment to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not like anybody else in here. That
was your first realization of that, Amy?
That was my first vivid memory of that, yeah.
And how old were you? You said nursery school. We're talking like 3-4 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably 4, yeah. So, and I thought, I'm in this alone. And, especially being undiagnosed, and when you have this thing that affects every part of your being every day from the time you get up till the time you go to bed, and you don't know what it is. And that's a hard space to live in, and it's very uncertain, and you don't really ever get used to not knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just so you can imagine when I was diagnosed that my life changed dramatically. So
okay, I've got a lot of questions for you, because this is like a big what I consider a gift that you're giving us to unwrap by sharing your story, by being vulnerable with us, Amy. So one, I'm grateful for that too. For those of us like me who know like enough to be dangerous about muscular dystrophy,
Sure.
and those who have heard of it but don't really know what it means, can you share with us what it is? And are there variations? Are there, like, for example, I have a niece who is diagnosed with Down syndrome, and there is a spectrum of functioning, so to speak.
Right.
So if you can share with us what it is, and if there's a spectrum, what is it, and where do you think you fall on that?
Sure. There are lots of different types of muscular dystrophy. I couldn't rattle the number off the top of my head. I have a type of muscular dystrophy called Bethlehem myopathy, and it's more
Bethlehem, like Bethlehem, the city.
Not Bethlehem. Here's Bethlehem. Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
Bethlem.
Okay.
Bethlehem myopathy. So,
okay. I'm just taking some notes here, by the way, if you see me writing.
Sure. And just personally speaking, what that means for me is that it causes weak muscles all over my body.
Okay.
And it is a slowly progressive disease. And most of the worst part of my weakness is in my legs, even though I do have it all over my body.
Okay. So imagine trying to pop up when somebody taps you on the head with goose.
Yeah. And I can't run. I've never been able to run or jump or anything like that. So my disability, my type, I walk with a really significant limp. So you definitely, if you saw me walking, you would know that I have a disability.
And now you said it's progressive.
Slowly progressive, yeah.
So you're 46 now. So are you able to, do you have a distinguishable difference in level of functioning from when you were younger to now that you notice?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I was very active growing up, and I did what I could. I rode my bike, I swam. My parents had me in swimming a lot because that was an exercise that I could do.
Okay.
And, I'm lucky I'm able to walk. There's a lot of people that live with muscular dystrophy that, I consider myself really lucky and fortunate. And,
I just got to comment on that because there's two things that come to mind. One, there's a celebration, and the other is a caution. And you can probably share your experience with this. But the celebration is the fact that so many people that I speak to with any type of disability have a profoundly higher level of gratitude than people without an identifiable disability. I think we all have a disability to some degree, whether that's emotional or, relational, whatever it is.
Right.
But I find that, and you're certainly no exception. You just said, I count myself lucky. I count myself lucky. Like, my legs are weak. I have this progressively worsening disease, and I spent most of my life not knowing what it was. So that's the celebratory piece that I just love. So maybe you can speak to that too, about if that's something that you feel like has always been part of your spirit, this ability to kind of redirect and towards gratitude. So that's part one. I know. Okay. This is what I do, Amy. I like land these loaded questions on you and just hope for the best.
Just remind me if I forget to answer any part of it.
I will. And then the second is more cautionary. And that is that I think that we as people tend to have a need, almost a compulsion to compare ourselves, to compare our situations to one another's. Yes. And I don't believe that they're comparable. So like me comparing myself to you, I don't have muscular dystrophy. You do. It's an incomparable, it's an impossible comparison because our experiences are different. And I think that sometimes what we do is say that, well, this person has it worse off or better off
than we
Right.
do when
Right.
we're really comparing not even apples and oranges. We're like comparing apples and monkeys. Like, like it's just a totally different world. And so the caution is how comparison can take its toll then on our identity, on our worth, on our value. So those are the two things: the celebration of the fact that you have this seemingly innate gift of gratitude and an ability to redirect that what could be grieving towards gratitude, and then this caution of how do I not compare myself to others? So either of those that you want to touch on.
Sure. No, I have not always been. I think I have always made the most of my situation the best I could. The living in gratitude is fairly new for me. I think when I was diagnosed, finally, I was able to kind of flip the script, and I didn't have to live in that area. I mean, I was constantly trying to figure it out, going to doctors, researching on my own. Constantly, that took a ton of my headspace.
Yeah.
And when I finally had a name and a focus for my disability, and I could say, instead of when people ask me, two of the questions I get: why do you walk like that? What's wrong with you?
So who asks you those questions?
Oh, strangers, or, growing up as a kid, they ask,
Kids
they
don't
say
have
things.
that filter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I heard that a lot. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Like from other kids growing up, especially. Yeah.
And they didn't mean anything. They just meant, why are you different than me?
But take us back there, Amy. Take us back to that time, because a lot of what happens to us, our identities are formulated both by our innate proclivities or tendencies that we're born with, our personalities, if you will, and that's paired then with our experiences in life and our interpretation of those experiences, which are also informed by our tendencies. So for you, what kind of impact did that have on you emotionally with regard to your worth, regard to your value of yourself, and relationally? Yeah.
I think it did. It probably took more of a toll on me that that I didn't realize, because I did have, and I still, to be quite honest, struggle with self-confidence and feeling, worthy, like a lot of us do.
That's right.
I do think I've come a long way in that, and that has come with, the gratitude and accepting where I'm at. I was really fortunate growing up in school that I had such a large amount of people that accepted me, and I had an awesome group of friends, all able-bodied. I did not have any friends. I didn't really know anybody that had a disability, so that part felt really lonely.
I cannot imagine. Did you? Surely, even though it may not be something you want to dwell on, surely you had periods of in that aloneness, in that utter aloneness, when you're looking around for somebody who's like you, and you find no one.
Yeah.
Did you have moments of feeling sorry for yourself?
Oh my gosh, yes, I lived in that space for a long time, and I've battled depression, and there were honestly times that I wanted to take my own life and thought strongly about it, and I think that really did just stem from just that profound loneliness and not feeling like you fit in anywhere.
Oh, that's good. That's good. The sense of belonging. That's one thing that, just psychologically speaking, every person needs, is a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And because then the aloneness, even though you might feel alone, the aloneness isn't so great. Like, I'm sure that having part of that belonging to not belonging to a diagnosis, but belonging to something that makes sense.
Yes. Yes,
right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That alleviates some of that aloneness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And when I did finally get that diagnosis of muscular dystrophy, I celebrated. I mean, I felt alive, and I just was like a new person. And I wasn't happy that I had muscular dystrophy. I was happy that that I finally wasn't alone, and I fit in a group of people that were similar to me, and I've been able to connect with, and it's just been, like I said, just life changing. And I'm not living in that state of feeling like, why me, why me, why me? I'm like, why not me? God, use me.
I love that you just said that. So I did a podcast episode for season 3 with my friend Dee Bourgoin, who was born with one arm or one hand. One hand. And she said that early on, that was one of the biggest shifts that she made, was instead of asking why me, asking why not me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why not? Why not me? Why not me, who has this connection with God that has grown, and He's been shaping me all those years of being undiagnosed. That was for a reason, and He was shaping me to appreciate my disability, if you will, and being challenged. And and I don't know about you, but I get the most I get the most out of watching others live their life that are struggling more than me, and watching what people overcome despite their challenges. And that to me is that's everything, and that gives me the most motivation to live my best life.
And I'm sure you are now, if not having beforehand throughout your life, been an example of the same caliber to others.
I think so. I mean, I think that sometimes I can't believe what people will say to me, and I don't feel even worthy of things that people say, that how I've been a pivotal person in their life. And that I totally, my faith is strong, and I think that is God using me and to help others. So.
Well, I want to go back to something that you said, you said, the phrase you used was that you believe that God was shaping you. And so thriving, the way that thriving is defined, not just by me, but by Merriam-Webster, by Google, whoever, is to grow, to flourish, to prosper. And what we know, just by looking at nature, we know that things grow and flourish and prosper in the face of adversity. Like, we don't always grow, flourish, and prosper when conditions are perfect.
Right. Exactly.
And so my question for you, if you could share with us, Amy, is what did you in the 44 years, and we'll talk about post-diagnosis as well, but in the 44 years pre-diagnosis, I feel like it's like the Israelites wandering for 40 years in the wilderness. And gosh, you finally get to the landing place, but But during that time, the Israelites, they certainly learned a lot, right? I am sure that you learned a lot that helped you to grow as a person, to grow as a woman. Can you share with us some of the learning and growth experiences that you had that were birthed from those 44 years of adversity?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up going to church with my mom and my sister, and so God was always a part of my life, but I learned that that God wants to use our story, and he, like I said, was shaping me and molding me. And I think that was learned by, I think the fact that all my friends were able-bodied was, of course, I was always comparing myself, but they taught me a lot about acceptance, and I didn't even accept myself. And
while others were accepting you.
Yes, they were totally accepting me, and they didn't see me. A lot of time, I hear this a lot, and I hear, when I see you, I don't see your disability.
Do you believe that when people tell you that, Amy?
Absolutely not. No, I don't. And in a way, I've had this conversation with my mom a lot, because she says, she says they mean it as a compliment. That's not what comes across. But in my mind, it's like, that just blows my mind. How are they not seeing that? That's such a huge part of me. Like,
for you.
For me.
Yeah.
Not for them.
Right.
And, they would never think about it this way, but I do. And I think about my friends, and then also my husband I met in high school. And I think not everybody would befriend somebody that was disabled. I mean, that's just the truth. And,
well, I think a lot of times, Amy, I would say that one of my observations has been is that, man, we're just like, as a human, race, as humans, when we don't know what to do with something, we just go the other way.
Yeah.
Because we just feel like, I don't know what to do with that, so I'm just going to avoid it.
Yeah. And that's true. And, and a lot of people, I get a lot of different looks and when I'm out in public. Some are like horror. I mean, I've seen that look. I know it's hard
really
but it's just because they don't understand. But I also get a lot of warm smiles and, people offering to take my shopping cart or just small gestures like that make me feel accepted.
Okay, so acceptance, that's one thing you're learning. Let me ask you this, because it's hard for women in general to accept help.
Yes.
Because we're like the great jugglers, who want to keep everything going. And it's humbling to ask for, and it's humbling to accept when it's offered. And so when people would offer to do things like that for you, to take your shopping bags or to open a door for you, or what's been your growth journey on receiving that?
Yeah. I think when you're growing up and you're a teenager and you've got this chip on your shoulder, and I tried so hard to just act like this disability didn't exist, and of course that never went away, and I still am a very, very independent person, and I think that I kind of, in a way, use that as a control mechanism almost. That gives me a sense of control that I am independent, and I think it's important. But I also do think it's really important to accept help, and I have had to do that more and more. If it's help from my scooter that I had to get to go long distances, that or help from my husband is an amazing person and helps me daily. My parents, my sister, I'm very fortunate to have so many offering to help me, and I'm learning to accept that more. Sometimes I think that accepting help can feel to me like failure, and I'm working on changing that too, because I know that's not true.
Well, yeah, certainly. And just, going back to your faith, I mean, we wouldn't need our faith if we didn't need help.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So this is like an opportunity for you to live that belief out loud, right?
Yes.
In your daily life. So two things that I hear you learning, all based in acceptance, which I think is really exceptional and just a challenging lesson for any of us, but acceptance of yourself and acceptance of the help being offered to you. Now, I want to go back to that thing that you said again about you felt like God was shaping you, because I always say that the tool that's on the workbench being squeezed in the vise and being chiseled away at, it's there because it matters, right? If it was beyond restoration, if it was beyond use, it wouldn't even make its way to the workbench.
Right.
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 So, but that's not how it feels when you're being squeezed in the vise. You're like, thank you for that. Right? I don't feel so valuable. So I want to ask you if you'd be, just as candid as you'd like to be. But when we are being shaped, things are being chiseled away, things that don't serve us well, whether that's beliefs that we have or habits that we have or relationships or whatever it is. So I wonder if you could pinpoint some things, or maybe even just one thing that you feel like as God was shaping you during this time, and is still, certainly that's not stopped. What do you feel like has been chiseled away?
Insecurity, for sure. Just, that's a huge one for me. And, I was extremely insecure, especially like, like I said, I met my husband in high school, and I couldn't get over like the fact that why would he choose me? And there's all these other,
is there an ulterior motive there?
Yeah, yeah. There's all these, beautiful girls that don't have a disability that that he could have chosen, and that really, for us and our young relationship, was hard because I struggled with that greatly. So I think certainly the insecurities have been chiseled away. And not that I'm, the most confident person, because I'm not, but I'm definitely have come a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that is because I'm living, I'm more aware of that I'm living in God's image of me, and I'm living through Him.
Yeah.
And He's living through me and shining His light.
Yeah.
And that's become my, my purpose now. And because I think that's where I'm supposed to be. So
tell us more about your purpose. What's your purpose now?
I think my purpose is, when I went to college, and what I wanted to do, was to help people. And to me, that looked like going to school to be a social worker.
Okay.
And, I worked in social services for about 16 years with adults and kids that had disabilities. And I did that until about 2013. And then I took a break, and I had to have a surgery, and I did a lot of home visiting with these jobs, and it was getting to the point where I was crawling up people's stairs because people don't have handrails and whatever. So talk about, meeting somebody for the first time, and you're, you're like, oh, hi.
Hi, here. I'm down here. Here I am.
Most people were really nice about that, but I feel like, I did help a lot of people. And so in this time that I've had not working and staying home, and I have two boys.
Okay. How old are they?
13 and 17.
Okay.
And I've just been able to, I needed some time to give myself a break.
Yeah.
And that's hard to admit to. But I think it was an important time for me to regroup and to grow. And luckily I was able to do that. And so I feel like my purpose is to continue to help others, which I've started. I got involved with the Muscular Dystrophy Association pretty much as soon as I was diagnosed.
This is a great segue. I was going to ask you next, Amy. Tell us a little bit about what you've been learning about yourself and what kind of freedoms, new things you've been discovering about yourself post-diagnosis.
I've learned that I have just an immense passion for helping others that are going through, starting out on the journey of muscular dystrophy, and that could be parents that have just gotten a child that's newly diagnosed, or I'm just really passionate about sharing my life story to use that to help others. And I've started doing that on social media more. I was chosen,
right here on this podcast.
Right here on this podcast. After I got involved with NDA, I was chosen to be the Indiana State Ambassador for 2020.
Wow.
Which I was super excited about, and just I was ready. I was going to, be doing some public speaking and sharing my story around my state, and trying to raise funds for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. But of course, COVID came and all that.
Yeah. So did any of that turn virtual?
A little bit turned virtual, but mostly I decided after I got over the disappointment, I'm like, well, I'm gonna take this into my own hands. I'm going to continue to help through, I don't have this huge platform or huge following. I don't think that you need to have that to reach the people that you're supposed to reach.
Say that, Amy. Say that. Yeah. I love that you just said that. Yes and amen. Yeah.
Because, I could have sat around and thought, well, I'll just wait till, maybe I'll have a larger audience. You really only need an audience of one. I mean, you just need to reach that one person that needs to hear, what you have to say. And so that's where I'm at right now. And I have done, I've done some work with Muscular Dystrophy Association throughout the year, a few things. So I'm still connected with them, and hope that when things get going again, that I'll be able to help in that way too. But I've had parents message me and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I found your story. I had no hope. Now I've seen you and what you've done with your life." And I mean, that's to me what it's all about. And like I said before, that's how I get motivation to live well too. And I love that I'm able to use my story to help others too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's taking what you've learned about yourself, accepting yourself, and exemplifying it in the work that you do, in literally pulling yourself up the stairs, crawling, because that's how much you accept somebody else and that's how much they matter. So I just love how your work mirrors your own personal growth and your own personal discoveries. I did want to ask you, was there ever a time, well, I'm sure there was a time, but my question is, was there an identifiable time, something that sticks out in your mind as the catalyst of going from a mindset that wanted to get rid of this and didn't want to have this problem to a mindset of, okay, I have this. Now, how can I use this? How can I work with this? How can I thrive alone in this?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely when I was diagnosed. That was just totally just flipped everything, the right side up. I feel like, when I was being shaped and molded, I was kind of flipped upside down, and it just, it was like a light switch, somebody turned it on, and I'm not saying by any means we're always growing, we're always learning, and hopefully.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's my
hopefully
that's
we don't
my
stop
goal.
doing that.
Right. But, I don't ever want to come across as though I've always had this figured out and I've always been this happy, positive person that was just always grateful that I was living with a disability and what.
I'm so excited. I'm stoked.
Yeah. No. I think you do have to grieve.
Yes.
That. And that's important to be able to grieve what maybe you thought.
Hopes and expectations and dreams for your life that have to look different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the face of a disability or any major event in your life that shakes things up, that turns them upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I'm mentoring this young lady that lives with cerebral palsy, and she's, I believe she's 18 or so. And her big struggle is, right now is the whole acceptance piece. And, what I said to her is to try to help her. That is something that's only come with age and just the growth, is that, no, you're never going to be like your able-bodied siblings or, but just like it's not their fault that you have a disability, you're privileged because you get to see the world from your perspective. And that's not something everybody gets, and you see things in a totally different way, and just I hope that she can get there too, and just see the beauty in what she has to offer, because it doesn't look like what everybody else has to offer, and that's what makes the world work, is that we don't all have the same things to offer.
That's 100% true. So, Amy, what does the future look like for you? And you've got this diagnosis. You two things in terms of your future. You have an answer, so then that would suggest to me that you also have potentially some hopeful courses of treatment or intervention. So that's part one. And then part two is what does the future look like for you going forward with your desire to help people? To cultivate this acceptance of themselves, to cultivate the value of themselves in the face of something that's potentially a lifelong trauma.
Well, going forward for me, as far as muscular dystrophy, that's what MDA is fighting so hard for, is to get, they're doing a lot of research. There's a lot of strides that have been made towards treatments and hopefully someday a cure. Right now, in that aspect, I don't have there's no medicine I take.
Okay.
But I will say that I decided, and this has nothing to do with MDA or any of their treatments, but I decided to do a stem cell therapy that I did on December 8th. So 3 weeks in.
So is that like an injection or?
So just they harvest stem cells from your own fat, the type of treatment that I did.
Okay.
And it's all a one day thing. They and then they process that, and I got an IV injection. To kind of, they can do it in different ways, but that's, since, my disability's all over, that's how they decided to do it. But, so that's. And
are you reaping benefits from that?
Yeah, they say it can take 2 to 3 months to know, for sure. But that's one thing that I've been posting on my social media, is showing even side-by-side comparisons. I'm able to stand up out of a seated position with a lot more ease. I'm able to walk upstairs with less effort. Small things, small victories like that are huge for me. And, it's not a cure, this treatment. They've definitely told me that, but it could, it gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope. And I believe that God can heal me if he chooses to do so. And if that's the case, then I'm ready to, share that with everybody. And if that's not the case, if I don't receive healing, I'm happy to share my journey still and be grateful for that. So
yeah, I love that. It's like the Apostle Paul said, I've learned to live with or live without and be content in both.
So I mean, right now, I think the best way to reach me would be, through my social media, Facebook or Instagram.
And those are, we'll put them in the show notes, but you can say them.
Okay. Instagram is at A Shinneman.
Okay.
ASHINNEMAN. And then Facebook is Amy Lawless Shinneman.
Okay.
That's LAWLESS and then Shinneman again.
Okay. Perfect.
But, I'm happy to connect with people as much as I can. And like I said before, I've talked with a lot of families. A lot of parents have reached out to me and we've chatted and I enjoy that. I would like to, I have a lot of ideas for the future. Just my big goal is just to help as many people as I can, to reach as many people so that they're not feeling alone and so that they can meet, that person just like me, like I always wanted to meet somebody just like me. So that's a goal. I don't know what the future holds totally. I know that I appreciate experiences like this that you're giving me to help me get my story out there so that I can reach more people. But like I said, I don't need a big, huge following to do that.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about being alone and having the experience of being alone like you've had for so many years. It's an honor because it provides us with the gift of empathy for others who are also feeling alone and wanting to reach out so that they don't have to feel so alone. So thank you for going through the alone space and for choosing to thrive through it and grow through it so that you can serve other people.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, this has just been awesome to be able to chat with you. And
so before we end the show, Amy, I ask every guest to leave people listening with one thing that you don't want them to forget when the show ends. One truth. I always say that if we can learn to speak truth over the lies in our minds, then we can truly learn to thrive in any and every circumstance, especially being alone. So what's the truth you'd like to leave with the listeners and the viewers today?
That you're never truly alone. I mean, you always have God with you, and even if it feels like you're the only person on the face of the earth with your situation, you're not. You can take comfort in knowing that there are others that are struggling through the same things as you. So take comfort in that and know that you're not truly alone.
Be sure to follow Amy's story. She's posting some incredible videos on her Instagram account that are just so humble and beautiful of her and her improving movement as she's going through some stem cell treatment. If you're feeling alone and you want to learn how to thrive, hers is a story that you want to be sure to follow. Be sure to tune in Thursday of this week for a solo episode from me. That's right, on season 4. We're going to be publishing an episode that's an interview, like the one you just heard with Amy, every Monday. And then every Thursday, you will hear a solo 10 to 15 minute episode of Thriving Thoughts Encouragement from yours truly. And I can't wait to see you there on Thursday. In the meanwhile, will you do me a favor, please? Help this message get in front of the people who need to hear it. It's a really simple thing that you can do if you're an Apple Podcasts user. You can just click on the show and scroll down and simply click 5 stars. 5-star ratings get this show in front of other people who need to know that even if they're feeling alone, they too can choose to thrive in any and every circumstance. Please remember to sign up for my Thriving Thoughts text community. I'd love to have you as part of that. All you need to do is text the word THRIVE, THRIVE, to 540-369-2139. All right, my friends, until Thursday, remember to speak truth over the lies, and you too will thrive in any